One of the most exhausting tests in life is not poverty, not illness, not even failure. It is dealing with people who drain your soul while smiling at your face. People who confuse your kindness for weakness, who pull you into cycles of hurt and leave you questioning your own worth. And the question is not, why are they like this? The real question is, how are you going to protect your heart without losing your character? Because as believers, we are not taught to hate people, and we are not allowed to become harsh or bitter. But at the same time, Allah did not ask you to be a victim of someone else's toxicity. There is a difference between patience and self-destruction. There is a difference between forgiveness and allowing harm to continue. And many of us, out of a good heart, blur that line until we are emotionally exhausted, spiritually drained, and disconnected from our peace. So today, we are going to talk about the smartest way, not the easiest, not the most emotional, but the smartest, most dignified, and most spiritually intelligent way to deal with toxic people. A way that protects your heart, preserves your dignity, and most importantly, keeps your relationship with Allah intact. Protecting your heart without losing your character is one of the most delicate balances a believer is asked to maintain, because it requires strength without hardness, awareness without suspicion, and distance without hatred. Many people think that being a good person means always being available, always saying yes, always absorbing the behavior of others no matter how harmful it becomes. But that is not what faith teaches. Faith does not ask you to break yourself to prove your kindness. It asks you to carry yourself with dignity, to recognize your worth, and to understand that your heart is an amana, a trust given to you by Allah, and not everyone deserves unrestricted access to it. When you deal with toxic people, one of the first things that begins to slip away is clarity. You start questioning yourself more than you question the behavior in front of you. You begin to justify what should never be justified, excuse what should never be excused, and tolerate what slowly erodes your inner peace. And the more you tolerate without boundaries, the more you teach others how to treat you. This is not about blaming yourself, but about awakening to a reality that many people ignore. If you do not define your limits, someone else will define them for you, and they will rarely define them in your favor. There is a common misconception that setting boundaries is a form of arrogance or harshness, but in reality it is a form of self-respect rooted in awareness. Boundaries are not walls built out of anger, they are doors with locks placed out of wisdom. You decide who enters, how long they stay, and how they behave within your space. And if someone repeatedly violates that space, you are not obligated to keep the door open just to prove that you are kind. Kindness does not mean access without accountability. The Prophet taught us gentleness, patience, and forgiveness, but he also demonstrated clarity in dealing with harm. He did not allow continuous oppression, nor did he encourage people to remain in environments where their dignity was constantly attacked. There is a strength in walking away that many people underestimate. It is not weakness to step back. Sometimes it is the highest form of emotional intelligence and spiritual maturity. When you begin to set boundaries, you will notice something uncomfortable. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will resist your change. They may call you distant. They may say you have changed. They may even try to make you feel guilty for choosing your peace. And this is where your intention must remain clear. You are not doing this out of revenge, nor out of pride, but out of a sincere need to protect what Allah has entrusted you with. You are choosing to preserve your heart so that it can continue to function in a healthy, sincere way. Boundaries require calmness. They are not established in moments of anger, because anger often leads to extremes. Instead, they are built through quiet decisions, repeated actions, and consistent behavior. It is not about one confrontation. It is about a pattern of response. You respond differently, you limit access, you disengage from unnecessary conflict, and you refuse to be pulled into cycles that drain you. Over time, this creates a new dynamic, one where your peace is no longer easily disrupted. One of the most powerful aspects of setting boundaries is learning to say no without over-explaining. Many people feel the need to justify every decision, to soften every refusal with long explanations, as if they are asking for permission to protect themselves. But you do not need to exhaust yourself explaining your limits. A calm, respectful no is enough. And those who respect you will understand, even if they do not agree. Those who do not respect you will continue to push, but their reaction does not invalidate your decision. At the same time, protecting your heart does not mean becoming cold or detached from everyone. It means becoming selective. It means recognizing that not every relationship deserves the same level of closeness. Some people belong in your inner circle, where trust, vulnerability, and emotional investment are shared. Others belong at a distance, where interactions remain polite but limited. This is not hypocrisy, this is wisdom. Treating everyone the same is not fairness when people behave differently. There is also a deep internal aspect to this process. Sometimes, the reason we struggle to set boundaries is not because we do not know how, but because we fear losing people. We fear being alone, we fear being misunderstood, and we fear the discomfort that comes with change. But you have to ask yourself a difficult question: what is the cost of keeping people who continuously harm you? What is the cost of staying in a space where your peace is constantly compromised? When you begin to reflect on this, you realize that the fear of losing others should never be greater than the need to preserve yourself. Another important element is emotional detachment from toxic patterns. This does not mean you stop caring completely, but it means you stop reacting in the same way. Toxic individuals often thrive on emotional reactions. They provoke, they manipulate, they create tension, and they feed off the responses they receive. When you begin to respond with calmness, or sometimes not respond at all, you remove the fuel that keeps the cycle alive. Silence in certain situations is not weakness, it is control. It is also essential to anchor your heart in your relationship with Allah. When your sense of worth comes from people, their behavior has the power to shake you deeply. But when your sense of worth is rooted in your connection with Allah, you become more stable. You understand that not everyone's opinion matters, not every criticism is valid, and not every relationship is meant to be maintained at all costs. You begin to see people for who they are, not for who you wish they would be. Forgiveness plays a role here, but it must be understood correctly. Forgiveness does not mean you allow the same harm to repeat itself. It does not mean you ignore patterns or pretend that everything is fine. Forgiveness is an internal release. It frees your heart from carrying resentment. But boundaries are external protections. They prevent further damage. You can forgive someone and still choose to keep a distance. You can let go of anger while still holding on to your limits. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you are being too strict or too distant. In those moments, return to your intention. Are you acting out of anger, or are you acting out of a desire for peace and stability? If your intention is sincere, then trust that you are moving in the right direction. Growth often feels uncomfortable at the beginning, especially when it involves changing long-standing patterns. And slowly, as you continue on this path, you will notice a shift within yourself. You will feel lighter, calmer, and more in control of your emotions. Your interactions will become more intentional, your energy more protected, and your heart more at ease. You will no longer feel the constant pressure to fix every situation or please every person. Instead, you will move with quiet confidence, knowing that you are doing what is necessary to preserve your well-being while maintaining your character, because at the end of the day, the goal is not to become distant from everyone, nor is it to build walls that isolate you from the world. The goal is balance, to remain kind without being naive, to remain patient without being passive, and to remain open-hearted without being unprotected. This is the smartest way to deal with toxicity, not by changing who you are at your core, but by refining how you allow others to interact with you, by choosing wisdom over impulse, calmness over reaction, and dignity over approval. Choosing distance over conflict is not a sign of weakness, nor is it avoidance in the negative sense people often assume. It is a conscious, intelligent decision to preserve your inner peace when you recognize that engaging will only deepen the harm. Not every situation requires your response, and not every person deserves your energy. One of the greatest forms of wisdom is learning when to step back, when to remain silent, and when to allow distance to do what arguments never could. Many people grow up believing that strength means always confronting, always correcting, always proving a point. But with experience, you begin to realize that constant confrontation can drain the soul, especially when you are dealing with individuals who are not seeking understanding but are driven by ego, control, or negativity. In such situations, engaging repeatedly is like pouring water into a container with no bottom. No matter how much you give, it will never be enough, and you will be left exhausted. Distance, in this sense, is not running away. It is stepping into a higher level of awareness. It is recognizing patterns and refusing to participate in cycles that bring no benefit. When someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, dismisses your feelings, or creates unnecessary tension, you are not obligated to stay and fix them. You are not responsible for changing hearts that are not open to change. Your responsibility is to protect your own heart from being repeatedly wounded. One of the most difficult parts of choosing distance is overcoming the urge to explain yourself. There is a strong desire within us to be understood, to make sure the other person knows why we are stepping back, to present our reasons clearly so that they cannot misunderstand us. But the truth is, people who are committed to misunderstanding you will do so regardless of how clearly you speak. Over-explaining often leads to more arguments, more defensiveness, and more emotional entanglement. Sometimes, the most powerful statement is a quiet shift in your behavior. When you reduce contact, limit conversations, or remove yourself from certain environments, you create space. And within that space, something important happens. You begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to reconnect with your sense of calm. You begin to realize how much of your energy was being consumed by unnecessary tension. This clarity is essential because it reminds you of what you deserve: a state of peace, a sense of stability, and relationships that do not constantly feel like a struggle. It is also important to understand that distance does not mean cutting everyone off abruptly or behaving in a harsh manner. It can be gradual, subtle, and dignified. You respond less frequently. You avoid engaging in arguments. You decline invitations that you know will lead to discomfort. And you become more intentional about where you invest your time and energy. There is a quiet strength in this approach, a sense of control that does not rely on confrontation. Toxic dynamics often rely on reaction. They thrive on emotional responses, on back and forth exchanges, on the intensity of conflict. When you choose distance, you remove yourself from that dynamic. You are no longer feeding the cycle, and without that fuel, the intensity begins to fade. This does not mean the other person will immediately change, but it does mean that you are no longer participating in something that harms you. There is also a spiritual dimension to this choice. When you step back from conflict, you are not abandoning justice, you are entrusting it to Allah. You are recognizing that not every wrong needs to be corrected by your own hands, and not every injustice requires your direct involvement. Sometimes, the most sincere response is to remove yourself and leave the matter to the one who sees everything, who understands every intention, and who is perfectly just in his judgment. This shift requires a deep level of trust. It requires you to let go of the need to control outcomes, to prove your point, or to ensure that the other person acknowledges their mistakes. It is not easy, because the human heart often seeks closure in the form of recognition or apology. But true peace does not come from others admitting their faults. It comes from your ability to release the need for that validation. Choosing distance also protects your emotional stability. Constant exposure to negativity can affect your thoughts, your mood, and even your relationship with Allah. It can lead to frustration, resentment, and a heaviness that lingers even when the interaction has ended. By creating distance, you are giving yourself the opportunity to reset, to breathe, and to restore your sense of balance. There will be moments when you feel guilty for stepping back, especially if you are someone who is naturally caring and empathetic. You may worry that you are abandoning someone or that you are not being patient enough. But patience does not mean enduring continuous harm without limits. True patience includes wisdom, and wisdom sometimes requires you to step away in order to preserve your well-being. Another challenge you may face is the reaction of others. People who are used to having constant access to you may not respond positively to your distance. They may question you, criticize you, or attempt to pull you back into the same patterns. This is where your consistency becomes important. You do not need to argue or defend your decision. You simply maintain your new approach with calmness and clarity. Over time, Distance allows you to evaluate relationships more objectively. Without the constant pressure of interaction, you can see things as they truly are. You can recognize which relationships are worth maintaining, which ones need to be redefined, and which ones may need to be let go entirely. This clarity is a gift because it helps you build a life that is aligned with your values and your need for peace. It is also worth noting that choosing distance does not mean closing your heart completely. It means being mindful of how you open it. You can still be kind, still be respectful, still make dua for others, but you do so from a place of strength rather than vulnerability. You are no longer exposing yourself to harm in the name of maintaining a connection. In many cases, distance can lead to a natural resolution. When you are no longer engaging in conflict, the intensity of the relationship changes. Sometimes, the other person may adjust their behavior, realizing that their previous approach is no longer effective. Other times, the distance may simply become permanent, and that is also a form of resolution. Not every relationship is meant to continue in the same way, and accepting this can bring a deep sense of relief. Your time and energy are limited, and how you choose to spend them shapes your life. When you invest in peaceful environments, supportive relationships, and moments of reflection, you nourish your soul. When you constantly engage in conflict, you deplete yourself. Choosing distance is a way of redirecting your energy toward what truly matters, toward what brings you closer to a state of calm and contentment. And as you continue to practice this, you will find that your reactions change. Situations that once triggered you will no longer have the same effect. You will feel less compelled to respond, less affected by negativity, and more grounded in your own sense of stability. This is not indifference, it is growth. It is the result of choosing peace over constant engagement. There is a quiet dignity in walking away from what disturbs your soul. It does not require announcements or dramatic gestures. It is reflected in your actions, in your silence, and in your ability to remain composed even when faced with provocation. This dignity is powerful because it is rooted in self-respect and trust in Allah. And in the end, choosing distance over conflict is about understanding that your peace is valuable. It is about recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting, not every argument is worth having, and not every person is meant to remain close to you. It is about making a conscious decision to protect your inner state, to prioritize your well-being, and to move through life with a sense of calm that is not easily shaken